We continue to follow that breaking news out of New Orleans, where at least 10 are dead and dozens injured after the driver of a pickup truck intentionally drove into a crowd of people on Bourbon Street around 3:15 this morning local time. Two federal law enforcement officials say the suspect is believed to be dead after opening fire on police officers and has been preliminarily identified as 42-year-old Shamsud Din Jabbar. The FBI is investigating this as an act of terrorism. Back with us are NBC's Jesse Kirsch on the scene in New Orleans. Frank Figliuzzi, former assistant director for counterintelligence at the FBI and a senior MSNBC national security analyst. Michael Balboni, former New York State Homeland Security advisor, and also Jim Kavanaugh, retired ATF special agent in charge and an MSNBC law enforcement analyst. Jesse, let's start with you with law enforcement coming out and identifying this suspect.
Yeah, so we now have the ID of the suspect. We'll be asking questions and looking into his background more. And this is someone who's accused of killing at least 10 people by ramming a vehicle intentionally down Bourbon Street. We are not in that area now. We are a little bit other part of the city where we're expecting a press conference from law enforcement, but also quite relevant is what's behind me here. This is the Superdome. This is a football stadium that is supposed to be hosting the Sugar Bowl, part of the college football playoff tonight between Notre Dame and Georgia. Two schools, two teams with massive fan followings, with a lot of people expected to be streaming in to attend this game tonight. And this is coming less than 24 hours after what appears to have been a real lapse in security on Bourbon Street, whether it was someone overcoming security measures or security measures that were supposed to be in place and weren't. At this point, we don't know. But either way, this is a security situation that is being scrutinized, hopefully is being reviewed, and hopefully we'll have answers on soon. And even as that is still all unfolding and that is all being reviewed, this is supposed to be a place with a lot of tourists, a lot of fans later. And I want to show you down the block here. This is just down the block from the Superdome. You can see that this is a sidewalk curb, and just beyond it, some metal barricading. There are quite a few police vehicles with flashing lights. We saw a Homeland Security vehicle out here earlier. And to be clear, I do not know what this looked like yesterday. We don't know what this will look like tonight. The game is not for about another 8 hours or so. So we're still quite a ways away from all that unfolding. But, you know, just down the block, actually on the same block as the Superdome, you've got, you know, what appears to be a softer barricading situation. And I don't know what the foot traffic will look like here later, but just it'll be interesting to see how the security situation around here evolves in light of what has happened. We were supposed to be hearing from officials at the top of this past hour. They pushed back the press conference by about 2 hours. The police tell us that is because the FBI has taken charge and wanted to push things back. So we're waiting for more information from officials. They have not yet taken questions at a press conference on this. And again, there are a lot of outstanding questions unanswered when it comes to the security situation last night and moving forward. And Francis, there is not just one big football game that is scheduled here this year. We are looking at the Super Bowl that is set to be hosted here in less than 2 months. And of course, that is always a major draw for the game itself, but also you can imagine many people come to be a part of the festivities around it. And of course, when people think of festivities and New Orleans, they think of Bourbon Street. And it'll be interesting to see how that changes in less than 2 months from now. Back to you.
Yeah, security paramount then, security paramount tonight, and also the big questions about the security. Jesse, thank you. I want to bring in Jim Kavanaugh when we talk about that, because I know you were very vocal in our coverage earlier in talking about whether this could have been prevented. We have reports, eyewitnesses who spoke with our local affiliate this morning that mentioned that the barricades and the barriers were actually down on Bourbon Street at some point. We know from the first briefing that this driver plowed in and went around the barriers. If there were barriers, what can you tell us, given that you were so vocal in saying that when it comes to something like this being prevented, that's something that you don't subscribe to?
No, I used to tell my people all the time, we won't make the same mistakes, we'll make new mistakes. I didn't get mad when my agents made new mistakes, but if they made the same mistake over again, and I was really, upset about that. I didn't want the same mistake. And when we're in the world of terrorism attacks, all police commanders know, Francis, they get bulletins from the FBI and Homeland Security all the time on terrorist attacks around the country. The police commanders have to be in tune to that. I mean, certainly the attack a few weeks ago on the German market, a few years ago in Berlin, a few years earlier in Nice, France, these are all vehicle attacks on gathering places. And here we have the most iconic street in New Orleans, one of the most iconic streets in America. And we dropped the vehicle barricades, and it's missed. So we're not learning from the vicarious experience of the police in the world. That's your responsibility to say, yes, this is my venue. How could it be attacked? It could be attacked by explosives. Okay, what do I need to do for that? I need to talk to the bomb squad, FBI, and ATF. It could be attacked by small arms, pistols and rifles. I need to talk to ATF, to FBI, who the terrorists are. It could be attacked by vehicles. What do I need to do? I need to have barricades up. And Michael Balboni, when he was in New York State, I mean, they constantly had commanders' meetings about this. They even had a vehicle attack in New York City years ago. So how are we missing this kind of an attack? Now, in the defense of any police force, you cannot prevent a vehicle attack on every street in your city. I mean, it's not possible. But look what NYPD does. They secure Times Square. That's a huge venue, but they have 3,000 officers on their special events squad, and they can do it. We're just talking about securing Bourbon Street here. It's 8 blocks long, and it's very narrow. So we're not, saying that the police have to secure the whole city of New Orleans. It's not really possible. A terrorist can come and attack people somewhere, but you don't want them going right down the heart of your biggest, most iconic venue, because terrorism, as Brian Jenkins said in 1974, is theater. And that's never changed, Francis. It's theater. And when you attack an iconic place like this, well, now guess what? You have world news, and you have a high body count. And so this spurs on more copycats and more other things. So every police commander, especially ones who had events last night, for example, should be looking at what they did last night in their city. Would we have been able to prevent this? Did we have the proper barricades up? Did we have our streets blocked in our critical, most iconic areas? Was that done? Because if we didn't do it, we need to learn the lesson, and now we need to do it. So I think that's a big lesson from this morning's tragedy.
Right, and you mentioned Michael, and I want to bring you in, Michael, and talking about that, because we're not just talking about this vehicle and the suspect who plowed down very busy Bourbon Street. We're also talking about the use of a long gun rifle, possibly shooting at the crowd as he was barreling down that road. Also, the IEDs that have been detonated and found within blocks here. So you have so many of these parts, Michael, not just one suspect with an intention of mass murder.
Yeah. So to Jim Kavanaugh's point, you can't protect an entire city, but you can prioritize the places that are the largest, softest target with the greatest exposure, not only for the nation, but for the world, because that is what the terrorist wants to do. They do want to send messages. When you look back at Christopher Wray, the FBI director, the outgoing FBI director, he's been talking about the near-term threat of a terrorist attack on U.S. soil since March. Actually, he began last year saying the same thing. So you have these heightened awareness. You take a look at the confluence of events, the Sugar Bowl and then the Super Bowl. Obviously, New Orleans is the party capital when you consider from the Southern perspective. These are all things that should sit there and say, you can't let your guard down. Now, people, unfortunately, what you do, you protect to type. In other words, what do they do in New York City? It's that moment that ball drops and everything leading up to that. You make sure you control the crowds, you deny vehicle access throughout Times Square. Perhaps what happens here is that, it's now 3:15 in the morning. The time has already passed for New Year's, and now the barriers go down because the guard goes down a little bit, figuring that we're past that moment. What it raises to me, and I'd love to hear what Jim thinks about this. So how did the guy know? How did the perpetrator know that these barriers are going to be down? Was he was pre-operational surveillance? Did he know something else? How would he pick this moment and this opportunity?
Well, that brings into question his plan, right? How sophisticated his plan was, and boiling down to the motive here, Frank. So when you look at that, and again, we want to bring up this vehicle, this significant piece of information that we have from law enforcement about this white pickup truck. It was a pickup truck that was involved in this incident, in this act of terrorism, as the FBI is calling it. With Texas plates, from what we know, NBC News law enforcement officials telling us that, and also this attached piece of cloth that you see in the back there, attached to a pole, a pipe, the white one right there on the hitch in the back of the truck, and what the motive would be. Frank?
Yeah, he's likely trying to communicate with us through that flag. It could be a distraction, but more likely than not, it isn't. It's probably him telling us what's behind this. And, you know, in terms of motive, people, we hear this, and I have to preach this every time we go on to cover a mass casualty event, a mass shooting. I tell people, look, people don't just snap. He did not get up yesterday morning and say, I think I'm going to do this today. He's been obsessing with something for weeks, if not months. He may have even disappeared. It's very common for people as they are approaching their flashpoint to violence to disappear. People may be wondering, where is he right now? Now they know the answer. So interviews of friends, family, coworkers are going to be important for them, saying, you know what, he couldn't get off this topic. He felt desperate. He was using the language of despondency. I can't take it anymore. I can't take this anymore. It's going to help explain and put this in context. Does it bring any closure to families of victims? Absolutely not. But it may help educate and get us to a point where we're more aware of people around us and the warning signs and indicators that someone is headed to violence.